as we said. So this is what we are going to cover. These are the scheduling algorithms. I wouldn't go for full view, but let me try to see what can I hide. There should be some way to hide this. Anyhow, I don't want to go for full view because I want to see classroom as well as the presentation side by side. So how do I hide this? Just a minute, just a minute, just a minute. No. I think we have to go for the normal view only. Okay, so today we are going to talk about CPU scheduling. That means how the CPU is allocated to different processes by operating system. And in that we are going to cover these first come, first served, also known as first in, first out by Ramsey. First in, first out, but first come, first served is a more popular term. Then shortest job first. Then shortest remaining time first, but Ramsey like to call it shortest time to completion first. Priority scheduling, and then round robin. I'll bring round robin at this point because this is how I've discussed it. And in the next lecture, we'll be discussing these three. So today we'll be concentrating on these 6 scheduling algorithms. Most of you might be aware of these algorithms, but let's say for the sake of completeness, we'll be covering this again. So let's go to the next slide. Now, in case of CPU scheduling, there is one term which is very, very common, and this is known as preemptive and non-preemptive. Non-preemptive means that a running process cannot be thrown out of CPU by any other user process. So a user process cannot be, a CPU cannot be deallocated from a running process by another process. And so only operating system can decide which process to run next. And operating system will only take the process away from the CPU as per the scheduling policy. So the operating system cannot take the CPU away from the process if it violates the scheduling policy. We'll see what we mean by that. A user process will either voluntarily give up CPU or it will utilize CPU for the time for which it was allocated CPU. So in between, this process cannot be taken away from CPU. And the main problem with this scheduling algorithm is that it does not consider priority, but ultimately every process will get a chance to run. Second is known as preemptive scheduling, in which if a new process comes and this new process requires CPU more urgently, then operating system may give CPU to that process. What we mean by urgently, that means as per some criteria decided by the scheduling algorithm. So if the process is of higher priority, the CPU can be given to that process. Or if the process is short and CPU thinks that bringing this process in will reduce the waiting time, average waiting time of other processes, then it can actually give the CPU to that process, and a long-running program may be taken away from the CPU. So it depends upon the criteria. In a preemptive scheduling, the CPU can force a process to leave the CPU, and so generally preemptive and non-preemptive is not only related to CPU scheduling, it will be related to any resource allocation. So if a resource is allocated to a process and a process voluntarily gives up the resource, the allocation is non-preemptive, otherwise it is preemptive. So generally, how do we how do we know that a scheduling algorithm is working correctly, or is good, not correctly, if a scheduling algorithm is good or not? So we need to have some kind of performance metric measures to check whether to compare two scheduling algorithms. So one of the measure is turnaround time, which means the time a process was completed minus the time when it was submitted. So when the process is submitted to the CPU and when a process completes the CPU, the difference between the time interval between this is known as turnaround time. Second thing is, if a process is not allocated CPU, it means it is waiting in certain queue, and that waiting time is known as waiting time. And response time is the time a process gets submitted to the CPU, and the very first time it gets allocated to CPU, the difference between these two time interval is response time. So generally, if we look at the complete journey of a process, it would be so the complete time interval consists of response time, waiting time, CPU schedule time, waiting time, CPU schedule time, waiting time, and so on. And ultimately, this whole time span of the process will be known as turnaround time. Of course, one of the things that is most important in CPU scheduling is the utilization of CPU itself. So the processes should be allocated in such a manner that CPU utilization is as high as possible. And that's why, as we discussed in the previous class, we should have a mix of input-output bound and CPU-bound process, so that when a process waits for an input-output, another process can occupy CPU and CPU utilization remains as high as possible. So naturally, if we are talking about any scheduling algorithm, what are we expecting? We are expecting CPU utilization to be as high as possible, throughput to be as high as possible, turnaround time to be as low as possible, waiting time to be as low as possible, and response time should be as low as possible. So when it comes to time should be as low as possible, and performance should be as high as possible. Now, one way to represent the scheduling algorithm is through what we call Gantt chart. So basically, it is a bar chart which illustrates a project schedule. In our CPU scheduling, it will actually show how the CPU is scheduled for a given process. So vertical axis is the list of the processes, and horizontal axis is the time interval. And width of the horizontal bar indicates the duration for each activity. So we'll see how it can be represented. So for example, the first scheduling algorithm that we will be considering is first come, first served. So as the name suggests, the process which gets admitted first will be allocated CPU first. And other processes will have to wait till this process completes its task. And so naturally, CPU is maintaining, so a queue is maintained. So the moment a process arrives, if CPU is busy, the process will be queued. So the processes will be waiting in the queue. So this is the processes will be allocated CPU as they arrive, in the same order as they arrive. So we'll be taking a simple example. For this simple example, we are assuming that all the processes are arriving at the same time, that is time interval at a time t equal to 0. And these are the CPU burst times that process requires. Actually, I told you that a process will require CPU for some time, then it will require IO, then it will require CPU again. So process can be modeled as a collection of CPU burst followed by input-output burst. Why we use the term burst? Because the time required by each process may not be equal. So some processes may require. So here the unit is some unit of time. So this is 4 units of time, 5 units of time, 3 units of time, and 2 units of time. So now if we try to present the Gantt chart, the way the CPU is allocated. So if we look from the perspective of CPU, the first 4 times are allocated for process 1. Next 5 are allocated for process 3, and next 2 are allocated for process 2. So all the processes will be completed in 14 time units. And that is to be expected because 4 plus 5 plus 3. And if there is no input output involved, so the time required to complete these 4 tasks would be equal to 14 unit time. The only difference would be the time interval, waiting time, and the so total turnaround time is 14, but average turnaround, average waiting time, and average response time will change for each process. Okay, so if you look from this perspective, so if you look at the turnaround time, the process 1 was submitted at time t equal to 0, but it completed at time t equal to 4. So the turnaround time is 4 minus 0 equal to 4. Process 2 was submitted at time t equal to 0, but it finished at time t equal to 9. So it is 9 minus 0. Process 3 was submitted at time t equal to 0, but it finished at time t equal to 12. So this will be 12 minus 0. And process 4 was submitted at time t equal to 14, and it got finished at, sorry, it was submitted at time t equal to 0, and it got finished at time t equal to 14. So the turnaround time for process 1 is 4, 9, 12, and 14. If you look at the response, the process 1 gets scheduled as soon as it comes, so the response time is 0. But process 2 has to wait for 4 units before it gets the CPU for the first time. So it will be 4, and 9, and 12. And if you look at the waiting time, process 1 doesn't have to wait at all, but process 2 has to wait for 4 units. Process 3 has to wait for 9 units. Process 4 has to wait for 12 units. So here I have calculated the waiting time from the turnaround time and finishing time. Now, if I look at the same example, I told you the Gantt chart in respect of CPU, but I can also prepare a Gantt chart in respect of processes. So process 1 gets scheduled at time t equal to 0 and continues till time t equal to 4. Process 2 gets scheduled at time t equal to 4 and continues till time t equal to 9. Process 3 gets scheduled at time t equal to this is how we can represent it. Okay. And I have not calculated average turnaround time in this particular case, but you can check the average turnaround time will be 4 plus 9 plus 12 plus 14 divided by 4, which is equal to how much? Which will be equal to how much? What will be the average turnaround time? Anyone? Am I audible to you? So 9.75, that's fine. Similarly, you can calculate average response time and average waiting time. Okay, so now let's go to the next example. In the next example, I have changed the arrival time. Okay, so what happens if the processes are arriving at time, different arrival time, which is slightly more realistic than the previous early constructed example. Okay. So process 1 arrives at time t equal to 0. So at this time, this is the only process which is in the queue. So naturally it gets scheduled. Process 2 arrives at time t equal to 2, but at this time process 1 is running. So naturally process 1 has to complete. And the moment the CPU becomes available, process 2 will start running. Process 3 comes at time equal to 5. By the time it comes, this is coming at this time, process 3 gets executed afterwards. And this is how, so the total turnaround time is still 14, but what is changing here, because the processes are coming at different time, the turnaround time for process 1 is 4 minus 0. Turnaround time for process 2 would be 9 minus 2. Turnaround time for process 3 would be 12 minus 5, because it is completing at 12, but it came at 5. And turnaround time for process 4 would be 14 minus 7. It got completed at 14, but it arrived at 7. So the turnaround time will be 4 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7. So this is 21 plus 4, 25. So it will be 6.25. Now the response time, process 1 came at time t equal to 0, gets scheduled. Process 2 comes at time t equal to 2 and gets scheduled at 4, so it will be 4 minus 2. Then it will be 9 minus 5 for process 3, and for process 4 it will be 12 minus 7. So it gets scheduled at 12, but it came at 7. So this is how response time can be calculated, and then we can look at the waiting time. Process 2 has to wait for 2 units. Process 3 has to wait from, because it came at time t equal to 5, it has to wait for 4 units. Process 4 came at time equal to 7, so it has to wait for 5 units. So you can see that average waiting time, response time, and turnaround time will be changing from the previous example because the processes are arriving at different time. Okay, so now if you look at the way I've again shown it here, the process Gantt chart. In fact, I should have modified this one also. I didn't show the waiting time here, but here the gray area shows the waiting time and orange area shows the scheduled time. So process 1 comes and gets scheduled. Here process 2 is waiting and then scheduled. Process 3 is waiting and scheduled. Process 4 is waiting and scheduled. So now we'll go, but in the real world, there will be some input output requirement also. So the process will be scheduled on CPU for some time, then it will wait for some input output, then again get scheduled on the CPU time. Now, naturally, when a process is scheduled on an input output, a process requires some input output to be done, then naturally, depending upon if the device is free, the process will get scheduled on the device at the same time. It is deallocated from CPU. But if the device is free, then process has to wait, and again it has to wait in a certain queue. So there is a queue for CPU. So all the processes which are ready to run but cannot get CPU because CPU is busy are in that queue. Similarly, for every device, there will be a queue and the processes will be waiting on that. Generally, the device scheduling will always be as first come, first served basis. You may go for priority depending upon certain applications, but generally it will be a first come, first served scheduling for devices. And that's what we'll be assuming in our model. So now we can consider a process to be a sequence of CPU burst and input output burst. So as I said, different queue is maintained for CPU and different queue is maintained for each device. And during its transition, a process will be moved from a queue to queue by the operating system. A ready process will wait in the queue till it is scheduled to run on CPU. And similarly, a process which requires an input-output event to occur will wait for its chance to be scheduled on that device. Now, in this particular cases, when a process comes, it will always go to the end of the queue because these are the queues, they are first in, first out structure. But the CPU queue may not be managed in first in, first out. It depends upon the scheduling algorithm that you will be using. So let's say this is an example. Process 1 comes at time t equal to 0, requires a CPU burst of 4, input-output burst of 3, and then again a CPU burst of 5. I'm taking a very simple example. And then let's see how the situation will change now. So the process 1 comes, gets scheduled on CPU, and because right now input-output device is also free, it gets scheduled on input-output device. Okay, but now because CPU is free, CPU is allocated to the next process, so this will be allocated to P2. Though process 1 has completed at time t equal to 7, it will not be again allocated CPU because till the processes in the queue complete, it cannot be scheduled. So process 1 gets scheduled, then CPU, it is deallocated from CPU, and then it gets on the input output device. At this point, when this process is exiting CPU, the CPU queue is consisting of P2 followed by P3 followed by P4. But now when the process, the input output event for this process is over, it will again come back to the queue. So it will come after P4. So naturally, it will not be scheduled, the CPU again, till P2, P3, P4 are completed. So P1 gets scheduled, then P2 gets scheduled, then P3 gets scheduled, and then P4 gets scheduled. But now let's look at the situation, what happens. P1 gets scheduled, then it gets the device. Because the device is free, it gets scheduled on the device. Meanwhile, P2 has been allocated CPU, then it requires the device. The device is free, so it gets allocated, but P3 has been scheduled. But when P3 gets deallocated from the CPU, it requires device, but device is not free. So it has to wait in input-output queue for the device. Then, meanwhile, P4 has got the CPU, and this is how the situation will look like. So when the P4 gets deallocated, P1 gets his chance, and then P2 gets his chance, P3 gets his chance, P4 gets his chance. So this is how the processes will be continuing their execution. So dark green area shows that process is being executed on CPU, and orange area shows that process has been allocated on device, and this peach color shows that process is waiting for input-output device. The gray area shows that process is waiting for CPU to be available. And this I should have shown by the same color, yeah, because now the process is over, so it doesn't require any CPU. So I should show it by the same color. Okay. Light green area shows no activity as far as this process is concerned. Okay. Now, if you look from the CPU perspective, so for the first 4 unit time, process 1 is scheduled. For next 5, process 3, then process 4, process 1, process 2, and you can see that CPU utilization is 100%. But if I look from the device perspective, first 3 units, so first 4 units, the device is free. Then for the next 3 units, the device is busy for process 1. Then again, it is free. For next 4 units, it is executing process 2. The next 2 units is executing process 3. Then it is executing process 4. So if you look at the device utilization, out of 28 time units, it has been used only for 3 plus 4 plus 3. That is 10 units. So device utilization is how much it will be? 10 upon 28, divide 10 upon 28 into 100, 1000 upon 28. So that will be roughly 35% or so. It will be less than 40%. So device utilization is low. Any questions till now? Now, what happens if a long process, if a large process, if a lengthy process, lengthy in the terms of time, comes before short processes? So naturally, you see, because this process will be executed for 20 units of time, this will add 20 to waiting and turnaround time for the subsequent process. So average turnaround time of the process of the complete system will increase, and average waiting time will also go up. So the problem with first come, so the main advantage of first come first served scheduling algorithm is that it is simple to implement. And it is fair. The problem with this main problem is the convoy effect. It means if a long process comes before short processes, so all other short processes will be delayed, and the performance will suffer. For example, if you go to supermarket and let's say you want to buy only one item, but the person, and let's say your friends also have gone with you, and all of you want to buy 1 or 2 items each. Now, naturally, so if you get to the counter, the counter will serve you very fast because you require only 1 or 2 items, and also you're keeping change. So the exchange is pretty fast. But let's say there is a customer in front of you, and the person is going for, let's say, 100 items, and while the cashier is processing the list of that items, the customer says, "Oh, wait for a minute, I forgot to get some other item, and let me get other item." So naturally, he's keeping other people waiting in the queue. So a longer process will increase the delay time for shorter processes. So first come first scheduling will suffer in performance because of that. So if the response time, so it is not suitable for interactive system. It may be where the user wants a fast response. The response may not be fast if a long process has come earlier. So an idea is to go for shortest job first. So the process which requires less CPU time should be scheduled first. That is the idea. So this is an example of shortest job first. So you can see that all the processes are arriving at the same time. So process 4 gets scheduled, followed by process 3, then process 1 and process 2. As you can see, the total turnaround time is still same, but average turnaround time will now change. Can you calculate the average turnaround for this particular example? Quickly. What will be the average turnaround time? Okay. So what will be turnaround time for P1, P2, P3, and P4? So as we can see, for turnaround time for P4 will be 0. What do we expect it to be for P3? Sorry, turnaround time for P4 will be 2. Turnaround time for 3 will be, because it is finishing at time 5, it will be 5. And for 9, for P1, it will be equal to 9. And for P2, it will be equal to 40. Am I right? So for P4 was submitted at time t equal to 0 and it gets completed at time t equal to 2. So it will be 2 minus 0, 2, 5 minus 0, 5, 9 minus 0, and then total. So average turnaround time in this particular case will be 30 divided by 4, which is equal to how much? 7.5. And I think we computed the same for the first come first served, and it was how much? I think someone answered in the chat that was 9.75, correct? So now here you can see that average turnaround time will reduce, and you can check for the waiting time also. But what happens if the processes are arriving at different time? Okay, if the processes are arriving at different time and a long process comes. So we are taking this example. So the processes are coming at different, so shortest job first. So at time t equal to 0, there is only one process in the queue, and that is process 1. So process 1 will continue till time t equal to 12. And then process 2, through it arrived at time t equal to 2, but it will not get chance to run on CPU till the process 1 is completed. Because when a new process gets admitted, then only CPU will see what is in the operating system will see what is in the queue and will sort them in ascending order of their burst time. So in this particular case, you can see that the performance would be bad. So one of the solution is go for preemptive scheduling. So the moment a new process comes, and if this process requires less time to be to be executed on CPU, then the remaining time of the process 1, then process 2 gets scheduled. So for example, process 1 comes at time t equal to 0, it gets scheduled, but at time t equal to 2, process 2 has come. So now if I look at the time t equal to 2 at that snapshot, process 1 requires 10 unit of time and process 2 requires only 2 unit of time. So shortest job would be process 2. So process 2 gets executed. Then at time t equal to 5, process 5 has, okay, and so again at time t equal to 4, process 2 is over. So process 1 gets the chance. So process 1 has still 9 more units to be run before it gets completed, but process 3 has come, which requires process only 1 unit time. So this is how the scheduling will take place. So in this case, instead of going for shortest job first, what we are going for is shortest remaining time first. But it can introduce problem. Can you think of what the problem could be? What if shorter jobs keep coming, then the long process may or may not get the CPU. So this could lead to starvation of the long processes, and ultimately it could affect the so these processes may never be scheduled on the CPU. So this is now another example in which we are considering shortest job first, and we are considering both CPU burst and IO burst.
Ma'am,
Yes, please.
ma'am, in the previous slide, when we are comparing the shortest job, we are comparing with the number of blocks remaining or the number of blocks that total blocks.
No, remaining, because at that time when the CPU is again going to take stock, the process 1 has already completed 2 units. So only 10 more units start to be run. So now if you look
Yeah.
at the snapshot at time t equal to 2, then it will be 10, 2, and process 3 has not come. So that's why it will schedule. So it is basically a kind preemptive scheduling. Preemptive shortest job first is nothing but shortest remaining time first. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
So again, we are taking another example in which we have got CPU burst as well as input-output burst. For the simplicity, I'm assuming all the processes are coming at the same time. So at time t equal to 0, if the CPU queue, if you look at the CPU queue, then shortest job is process 4. So process 4 gets executed. But now it requires I/O, so it will go into the I/O device. I/O devices we will be assuming are always first come, first served. They're scheduled in first come, first served. Meanwhile, process CPU will move to the next process, which is shortest. So at time t equal to 2, if you look at the snapshot, process 4 is no more in the queue because it is already scheduled on input-output device. So the shortest job now is process 3. So process 3 gets scheduled. So now if I take the snapshot at time t equal to 5, process 4 has completed and again come to the queue. But now it requires 4 units of CPU burst. And now the process at this point, if I took at this point, okay, at this point, time t equal to 5. At time t equal to 5, the processor queue will consist of process 1, process 2, and now process 3 comes. Sorry, let me repeat again, sorry. So initially process 4 gets scheduled, and then it gets allocated input-output device. At time t equal to 2, process 3 will start running. Now I'm taking the snapshot at process time t equal to 5. Process 3 is in device queue. Process 4 has already completed its input-output, so it also comes back to CPU queue. But when it comes to CPU queue at time t equal to 3, at this time, if you look at the snapshot, process 3 is already running. And it requires 4 units of time. And process, it requires 4 units of time. Process 1 and 2 requires process 4 and 5 respectively. So CPU queue will now consist of process 1, process 4, and process 2. I'm somehow maintaining the, so it could have been process 4, process 1, and process 2 also, but somehow I'm assuming that process 1 was already in the queue, so I'm going for stable sorting method, let's say. So process 1, process 4, and process 2. So at this point, so when P3 exits, so process 1 gets scheduled. I think I made a process 1 gets scheduled. But meanwhile, at time t equal to 9, process 3 has also come out of the device queue. And now the CPU queue will consist of process 2, process 3, and process 4. But process 2 requires 5 units of time, process 4 requires 4 units of time, and process 3 requires 3 units of time. Process 3, so process 3 gets scheduled. Then at this point, process 1 has also come out, but it will require 5 units of time. So process 4 gets scheduled, then process 2 gets scheduled, and then process 4 gets scheduled. Meanwhile, process 2 gets allocated IO device, and then process 2 gets scheduled. Have you understood what I'm trying to say here? So at any time when there is a change, whenever a process leaves a queue and gets and joins the CPU queue, again we have to take stock of which is the shortest process. Am I right?
Ma'am?
Yes, please.
Ma'am?
Yeah, okay, I'll explain it again. So let's look at the queue. Let me draw the queue. Initially, what will be queue look like? Initially, the shortest process is P4, then P3, then P1, and then P2. Am I right? So process 4 gets scheduled. At time t equal to 2, it gets allocated to device queue. So at time t equal to 2, it goes to device queue. So this is CPU queue I'm talking about. Okay. So at this time, the next process that will be allocated will be P3. Is that right? Meanwhile, when P3 is running, I'm not here considering the preemptive scheduling. That will be shortest remaining time first, but I'm assuming shortest job first only. So till P3 gets completed, no other process will get scheduled on CPU. So process 3 is running. Now at time t equal to 3, process 4 has come out of the queue. Okay, P3 is running. So the queue consists of P1 and P2. But now when process 4 comes out, it has 4 CPU bursts to be run. So P1 also requires 4, P4 also requires 4. So I'm considering stable sorting. So P4 comes at the CPU queue like this. So now when P3 gets completed, then P1 gets scheduled. And now at time t equal to 7, P3 has come out. So P1 gets scheduled, P1 is in the CPU, so the queue will consist of P4 and P2. P4 is requiring 4 units of time and P2 is requiring 5 units of time. But at time t equal to 7, P3 is also completed its first burst and IO burst. So P3 requires 3 units of time, so naturally P3 will be at the top of the queue now. And now P1, when P1 gets executed at time t equal to 9, it goes to the device queue. So P3 gets scheduled. And now when this comes out of the queue, it requires 5 units of time, so it will go to the end of the queue. Okay, so P4 gets executed. Now P4 is completed. P3 and P4 are completed. Now, so I should change the color here. So they are completed, so they are no more required to be executed on the, what did I do? This is where it is completed, so let me change the shade. This is where it gets completed, so let me change the shade. Okay. Now at time t equal to 16, after P4 has completed, the queue consists of P2 and P1. So P2 gets scheduled. Now P2 का सिर्फ first burst खत्म हुआ है. So naturally it has to go for IO device and then it will come back to CPU. So this is how it will look like. Any questions now? Nitin? Have you understood? Nitin? Nitin?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you understood
Yes,
what
ma'am.
I said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So the second one is showing the way they are scheduled on the CPU. And the third one is, so there are 3 Gantt chart here. The first one is for process, second one is for CPU, and third one is for IO device. Okay, so the problem was so now actually the main problem with the shortest job first is that it is an ideal algorithm. It cannot be realized in practice. Why? Because we do not know what will be the CPU burst. So if you are running a multimedia player and if you are browsing, CPU doesn't know how much time the CPU will be required for the next burst. So the burst cannot be known in advance. So naturally, this algorithm cannot be predicted. So it might be an optimal algorithm, but the problem would be how to implement it. So naturally, people will try to approximate shortest job first and try to predict the next CPU burst time based on the past history. And now the CPU queue will be sorted on the basis of this computed or predicted CPU burst. So estimating, it's not shortest remaining time first. Okay, so generally the remaining time, so the next burst is estimated on the previous past history, and according to that next calculation, the sorting is done. So generally the formula that we use is this one. So the CPU will run, so CPU will start with some assumption that this process is going to require this much time, and then the process is actually executed, and then it takes a kind of weighted average of the actual time the process was run and what it predicted. and this will be known as the next prediction. Okay, so T indicates the actual burst time. Now, once the process has been executed on the CPU knows how much time was given for that burst. So at time t equal to 0, it doesn't know what will be the burst. So it will assume certain burst, then it will run the process, and now it knows the actual burst time. So it will take a weighted average of the actual burst time and the and its prediction, and predict the next one. So for example, we'll take an example. So let's assume that alpha is equal to half. So basically it is actually averaging the 2 burst time. So let's say initially it assumes that the expected burst time is 10, but actual burst time was 6. So naturally CPU will take the average of the 2 and assume that the next burst time is 8. Okay, then but actually when it runs, it finds that it was run only for 4 minutes of time. So the next burst will be 6. Then next burst will be 6. Then 5. 6 plus 4 ka half. 5 plus 3 ka 8. 4. 8 plus 4, 6. So the predicted burst time may not match with the actual burst time. Okay. So now if I expand this equation, so I'm substituting tau n with again this equation. So if I do it, it will come to this particular scenario. Okay, so basically if you look at the predicted output, it is actually a weighted sum of past bursts, but the weight keeps on decreasing as we move away from the current time. So the most recent burst will get a higher weight than the less recent term. So as you start progressing, you are actually forgetting the past history, and you are concentrating more and more on the recent events. That's what it actually means. So this is happening because alpha is less than 1, so 1 minus alpha is also less than 1. So all these terms are fraction. So when the fractions are multiplied, then the new value is less than the 2 fraction. That's why it will be, the weights will keep on decreasing. But if alpha equal to 0, then the predicted outcome is based only on the past. So the history doesn't mean anything. So always you are making the same prediction. But if alpha equal to 1, then you are not actually considering the past prediction. You are actually considering on the what was the last burst time. This was the example that we consider. So okay, this is an assignment that you have to do at home, and you have to complete this table. Now we come to the priority scheduling. In the priority scheduling, that each process is assigned an integer value, which we call priority, and smaller the value of the priority, smaller the value of the integer, higher is the priority. And in case of Linux, 0 is the highest priority, and init process, which is the starting process, is given that priority. Of all ready-to-run process, CPU is assigned to the process which has got the highest priority. Now, priority scheduling can be of 2 types, preemptive and non-preemptive. The problem in the preemptive or priority scheduling is generally it is implemented as preemptive priority scheduling, because if a job with higher priority comes, CPU is allocated to that. The problem is that it can lead to starvation or infinite postponement of the low priority process. Because if high priority process keeps on coming, the low priority process may not get the chance. For example, if in a hospital, the emergency cases keep on coming, then the other patient may not get to see the doctor. So that could be sometimes fatal for those patients, because they might be waiting for the doctor for too long. So in that case, so to avoid this kind of problem, the priority of the process is increased as the time progresses. So if a process is waiting for too much time, then you increase its priority so that it gets a chance to be allocated on CPU. So this is a non-preemptive example. So we are assuming that the processes are coming at different time, and these are the CPU bursts and these are the priorities. So at time t equal to 0, there is only one process whose priority is not as high, it will be scheduled on CPU. But because it is non-preemptive, at time t equal to 1, the process 2 gets queued. So by the time this process gets executed, there are 2 processes in the queue. P2 and P3. So at time t equal to 4, process 3 gets to run. Process 3 gets to run. And when this process is over at time t equal to 7, the queue will consist of process 2 and process 4. But process 2 gets to run because it is of higher priority. So this is how the situation will look in non-preemptive scheduling. Any questions? Now let's come to the preemptive scheduling. Preemptive scheduling, the situation will change. Process 1.
Ma'am,
Yes, please.
ma'am, P2 should have started at 2 in the previous slide.
Why?
Ma'am, because it is higher priority than P2.
Non-preemptive. It is non-preemptive. It is
Okay,
non-preemptive priority.
Okay, ma'am.
So the process, the CPU cannot be taken away from the process till it completes its burst. Now we are coming to the preemptive. This is what will happen now. So in this particular case, process 1 starts to run, but at time t equal to 1, another process has come which has got a higher priority. So this process gets executed. At time t equal to 3, even higher process comes. So process 3 starts getting executed. And because process 3 is the lowest priority at any time, so process 3 will get to the completion, and now the process 2 will get the chance. Then process 4 will get the chance, and then ultimately process 1 will get the chance. So this is how the CPU will be allocated, and this is how the processes will be progressing. Any questions now? Now I'll come to round robin scheduling. Round robin scheduling is very simple, in which at every, we consider that the CPU will be allocated to a process for a quantum of time. And generally this quantum is decided by your timer interrupt. So the time interval between two timer interrupt is equal to the quantum. So a process is allocated for, generally it will be allocated for one quantum, but you can assume any multiple of this quantum. So quantum is the time interval between two timer interrupts. So process will be executed for one quantum, and then the next process will be given the chance. So process will be queued in, the process will be put into the queue in, first out principle. So this is an example. Process 1 runs, then process 2, process 3, process 4, process 1, process 2, process 3, process 4. But at this point, process 1, process 2, process 3. So process, at this time, process 4 will not be executed, but it is already over. There were 2 burst time. Now the process 3 is also out because it burst is also over. So this is how the situation will look like in round robin. Now we're taking another example in which the processes are arriving at different time. So process 1 comes, gets executed because no other, so at time t equal to 1, there is no other process. So process 1 will get the quantum again. At time t equal to 2, process 2 has come. So process 2 gets scheduled and process 1 gets into the queue. So at time t equal to 0, process 1 is in the queue. At time t equal to 3, again the process 1 will run and process 2 is in the queue. But now at time t equal to 4, process 3 also comes. So it will join the queue after process 3. So when at this time when at time t equal to 4, process 1 is exiting the CPU and process 3 is being admitted. So we'll assume that process 1 will take some time because of the context switch. So process 3 gets into the queue first and then process 1 gets to the CPU. So we'll assume that a process being admitted will get to the queue first, then the process that is being deallocated CPU. Okay. So the queue will look like this. So at time t equal to 4, process 2 was already in the queue. Then process 3 is being put into the queue, and then process 1 exits the queue and process 1 joins the queue. So the queue will look like process 2, process 3, process 1. So at time t equal to 4, process 2, process 3, process 1, process 2. But now at this time t equal to 6, process 4 has come. So let's look at this. What would queue look like at time t equal to 6? So what was queue looking like at time t equal to 4? P2, P3, P1. P2, P2, P3, P1. Then it will be P3, P1, P2. At time t equal to 5, the queue will consist of P3, P1, P2. Then at time t equal to 6, P1, P2, and now before P3 exits, P4 has come. So it will look like P1, P2, P4, P3. So naturally, once P3 gets executed, P1 gets chance, P2 gets chance, P4, P3. P1 gets chance, and now because these two processes are over, then P4 will get chance. That's how the progress will take place. Any questions? So we have to keep in our mind, we have to make one convention that that's how the queue will look like. But in reality, the situation may change because of the synchronization. I'm making an assumption that when a process is being admitted and when a process is exiting the CPU, then in the queue, the process being admitted gets the first chance. That's what I'm assuming. But in reality, actually, it can be any order. But if you're making any assumption on that, so while solving the questions, please write it that way. Okay, I'm assuming that process 4, a process that is being deallocated from CPU will take some time because of the context switch, and that's why it will be. I'm assuming that, but actually, in reality, the process that is being admitted to the CPU queue is also being taken care of by operating system, and the process that is undergoing context switch is also being taken care of the operating system. And depending upon how the hardware is designed, whether they are parallel units or the different OS threads doing these two different activities can be run in parallel or not. Depending upon that, it is and ultimately when they are being put into the same queue, that is the resource. Even if these OS threads could run in parallel on different hardware devices, they have to put them into the same queue. So now it is a race condition, so you do not know which thread will win. So ultimately, in reality, it may not happen like this, but for explaining purposes, I think it is easier if we keep one convention in the mind. And the convention that I'm using is that a process that is exiting the CPU will be add to the queue after the process which is being admitted. So a new process will get to CPU first, then the process that is exiting the CPU. Is that clear to everyone? Any questions? So I will ask you to do this assignment right now, or rather, because we do not have time, I will convert it into the home assignment now. And now we'll go for just, so these are the 3 assignments. In fact, there are other assignments also. So I'll be posting these slides on the classroom, and you have to do these assignments by tomorrow. So anyhow, any questions? So I'm putting a question on the classroom. I'm stop sharing. Okay, so please answer it for the purpose of the attendance. And if there are any questions, please let me know, or you can post your questions on WhatsApp also. And if there are no more questions, then we'll continue in the next class. So in the next class, we'll be starting with multi-feedback, a multi-level feedback queue, scheduling algorithm, lottery scheduling algorithm, and hopefully we'll be able to do for the completely fair scheduler, which is used by Linux. If there are any other questions, please let me know. So I'll close the session for the meeting. You can continue on the attendance, and please continue with that.